computer. Wonderful. Well, hello, good evening, good morning. I don't know what area of the world you're calling from. And this is our meetup today is part of the Agile 20 reflection. So it's part of the whole ceremonies, whole events that are going around the world 24/7. There's an event going on that is about celebrating the 20 years of Agile. And everyone is speaking from different point of views. Everyone is bringing their experiences, and I'm happy we are part of this. And this meetup can contribute somehow in this celebration. Agile meetup, our meetup, Agile Ontario, has been around for 7 years now, and we have had regular sessions. And with COVID, we moved into being remote, and that opened the door to now we can invite friends from anywhere in the world. So now we are having session with friends from around the world, and yeah, we have had people from different countries, and tonight we have Alex from Brazil. Alex, I can't thank you enough for being part of our group. I've known you before, and I love the way you approach to every complex issue. I love the way you speak to people to reach to their heart and to their mind, not just do this, but bring the why behind everything you do. So I'm very happy you accepted to be on our session today and to share your experience. You recently moved back to Brazil from US, and you took this role as leader in this bank, and I'm going to let you do the rest, but welcome. Thank you for being with us, and I'm going to share the floor with you.
Thank you so much, Ardita, Cheesy. It's my honor actually to be here. I'm so happy that there's a silver lining in the pandemic is that I can join our friends in Canada and speak to you all a little bit. So as you've said, I've been back in Brazil. So I used to work with Ardita and Cheesy and Ashley and Mike Creaser here at Industrial Logic. And as part of that work, I engaged in an assessment of this startup in Brazil, fintech, Nubank, and I guess the story there goes a little bit like a bunch of assessments. You go in and you're like, hey, everybody, this thing is the elephant in the room, and you shouldn't ignore it, and this is why it's gonna bite you in the ass in the future. And then they're like, okay, Alex, and thank you for your advice. 3 years later, can you rescue us from that elephant? It did bite us in the ass, right? However, at Nubank, I came in and I saw the engineering teams doing a bunch of great things, right? But one of the things that was gonna really trip them off was relying on end-to-end tests and staging for their continuous deployment pipeline, right? So long-running end-to-end integration on a flaky environment where people also did manual tests, so some engineers could come in and mess up the data, right? It's like, oh, why did the test fail? A lot of flaky runs. And I'm like, okay, well, this is gonna get you in trouble if you really want to, continue to do continuous integration and continuous deployment. You should probably take a look at this. And checking in 2 weeks later, to my surprise, they actually took a look at it. And one of the principal engineers that we have, Rafael Ferreira, he actually sat down and did some math, right? And it's like, well, when you said that queuing theory, thinking through in a couple of years with the growth of the engineers that we have, our pipeline is going to take forever for a PR to be merged and deployed. So that we can't have that won't scale. And they actually started tackling it. And with my support while still a coach at Industrial Logic, they started transitioning to use contract tests between their microservices, for example. And I'm like, oh my God, this company has something special. I love Industrial Logic. I miss it a lot every day, learn so much from my friends, but I also, for personal reasons, small son and wanting to come back to Brazil to be close to friends and family, just decided on embarking on that journey, right? And it's been great. It's going to be almost 3 years as an employee. Had an extra year there still with IL, coaching them through their initial growth stage where they first got managers. And now I'm here as a senior director of engineering, continuing on that journey. So we killed the end-to-end test suite about a year and a half ago. We're able to get rid of it. We still have a staging environment for manual testing and things like that, but our continuous deployment pipelines do not rely on end-to-end tests anymore. So just a bunch of micro tests, and we have an acceptance test suite that we created that allows people to test multi-service interactions. We rely on contract tests a lot, and yeah, it's been a great journey, and I'm happy to be able to share some of it. Surprised a couple of weeks back, we got another series of funding, and now we're like among the 25 most valuable startups in the world. And like up top, there's SpaceX. I don't know how you can even call yourself a startup, like just blowing up rockets here and there. But it was an honor to be able to see such high growth. We're operating in 3 countries now, so Mexico and Colombia, as well as Brazil. And we really want to help people be owners of their financial lives and get rid of complexity. It's part of our mission. I try to apply that for product engineering, right? How can we get rid of complexity on how we work, optimize that inner cycle, and kind of help folks really live agile with the lowercase a to celebrate the 20 years of the manifest.
What was the first challenge you faced, Alex, when it came to
So
being
I
over
came in
that
and was
part
like, I'm gonna bring all these things like TDD, and I'm gonna help folks be better at refactoring and design patterns. It's gonna be awesome, right? It's like I have so much knowledge around this stuff. My first biggest challenge was helping the company become good at giving feedback. It's like, wait, no way, I don't, the developers don't need that inner cycle feedback loop from TDD. Just, I mean, it could help, but people are not really criticizing each other. They're not praising each other. There's like everybody's rushing, and there's so much imposter syndrome and people feeling that they have to prove themselves, and they don't really stop, and they don't have this muscle memory and this daily practice of hey, great meeting. I loved when you said that. Keep it up. Or it's like, oh well, this one thing that you did made me feel weird. Where did it come from? What we can do in the future so that we avoid these kind of feelings. So it was kind of a surprise actually to start tackling some of the harder skills there and helping folks. So we kind of brought Kim Scott in, and she helped us with the radical candor training, for example. I started doing some psychological safety workshops, and just like, hey, these teams, they need to open up to each other. And, people need to be able to be themselves and take risks and make mistakes and know that they're not going to be punished. So I started doing a lot of that for a bunch of teams. And it was surprising because I didn't expect it at the beginning. They even pitched, hey, do you want to be head of HR? 3 years ago we didn't have Renee, and now we have Renee. She's doing great as people in culture. I was like, no, I don't want to be head of HR. I'm a software engineer. I'm just helping on this because I see an opportunity. But can I stick to engineering, please?
I can see you being the head of HR.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll confess that I helped a little bit with like our engagement survey. We looked into adding a few questions to try to detect burnout or some things like, more broad. But I don't know. I mean, I'm really happy being close to the software engineering challenges and the product challenges, really. And uh,
So maybe
it's all.
just a reminder for everyone. This is like a fireside chat. Uh, bring on questions. It's just an easy conversation. That's our styles usually. We love to chat and we love to get in. debate or discuss. So if you have questions, just bring it on. So maybe I'll start with another one. So when did you actually get to do the technical practices that you said you were going to do? After how long it took for all these softer.
I mean, I was kind of like tackling all the opportunities. Not that I didn't help with, as I said, well, still as a coach, we were tackling that end-to-end testing suite challenge, right? I guess right from the beginning, some of these things started happening. Like, so I started helping a few teams learn about mob programming, for example. And then even though we didn't have what you would call like Michael Feather's definition of legacy code, because there, automated testing has been part of our DNA from the beginning, we did have some of those macro services where, hey, when we started, this one thing called customers kind of grew, right? And we couldn't really call it a microservice anymore because it had a lot of responsibilities and a lot of endpoints and complexity. So we started seeing some scaling issues with some of that stuff, and the opportunity to kind of like slow and steady tackle that. So I mean, in one of our teams, today they're called growth, right? My initial 6 months was focused on the acquisition funnel. And today we bring about 2 million new clients a month in Brazil. Wow. Back then we could do about 100,000, 200,000 tops, and we would have 3 crashes a week where, systems would just internal denial of service attack. It's like, oh my God, why did you, we had this thing, because especially for credit card, we have to do a credit analysis before we give a credit card to a customer, right? We don't want to just give credit to somebody that won't be able to pay. But as our models get better, we have this process called a republish, so that we can run the new model against the data that we have and say, hey, you know what? Now that we know better, we actually do want to give you a credit card. And part of the acquisition funnel was about looking at that population of people that signed up and seeing if we could get them in. But people got really excited when a new model version came out that we invited so many people that the system kind of crashed on itself. Having to just like live through that and understand, okay, what's wrong, folks? How can I help? Okay, where's the bottleneck, or why are we inflicting this pain on ourselves? Can we throttle this? What can we do, right? And it was a challenge finding these opportunities to slice things down, turn synchronous calls into asynchronous calls, look at the existing systems and giving teams the time to actually, improve them, work on internal quality. We even have this practice is now called qualitividade, which is a mix on words between quality and productivity. So it's about the productivity through the internal quality of the code, basically. And for this one team that had 3 operational incidents a week, I had to kill a project. It's like, no, we're not going to do that because we can't. We don't have the capacity. We're killing ourselves here. So cancel that project. And 30% of our time, don't bother the engineers. We're going to be like heads down, working on the things that we need to work, better test coverage and scalability. And then, today we have those 2 million clients a month, no crashes on those systems. But it took over 6 months of like steady 30% of our time dedicated to that internal quality and cleaning things up and paying off some of that scaling debt. I won't call it technical debt because we had the test coverage to be able to like make progress quickly, but certainly the system wasn't designed with the scale that we were living at that time.
Who has some questions?
Hey, Alex, something I think you might be interested to talk about. Good to see you, by the way. This is Joe. But I know like a couple things. I remember Alex brought me in about a year and a half plus or whatever ago, and I did quite a few things with him, fun group of people. and they have the test coverage today, but back then they were still working on a lot of that. But something that's really, I think that's made a big difference, and I heard you give a presentation about this a while back too, was you have this kind of consistent common architecture. And I've even talked to a lot of the technical teams, because I've been involved with microservices design and other stuff with the teams, is having, sometimes they don't even think about microservices, just thinking about the problem, because, you know, you're using ports and adapters or other things. You don't even really think, am I doing microservices? No, you're solving the domain problem and focusing on that, and how that allows you to kind of adapt and evolve as you go. So you might kind of share some, I think you probably have some good stories. And also a second thing too, just to think about, is I remember like a year and a half or whatever ago, when we were really, this has evolved a lot. I talked to Ceci about it recently too, is early on, I know you didn't have much, especially as you were growing so rapidly, a good problem to have, but trying to adjust to that is how to measure and get feedback of really what's going on, even for the teams to use internally, lead time, other types of things, and how you evolve, because I know that's evolved a lot. And that was a big push, especially a year and a half, 2 years ago as well. And the big wins from that.
Yeah, so I think this transition from small startup to big startup is very challenging, right? It's very challenging because there's no documentation. It's all oral history, right? Oh, who knows this system? Lucas Cavalcanti is a principal engineer. He wrote 80% of it. Can anybody explain the business rules for a credit card? Yes, Lucas Cavalcanti, because he wrote the code. Can we have that documented somewhere else? Well, that's going to be really hard because he doesn't really remember everything. So to figure out what the business logic is, we have to reverse engineering this existing system. And that's where Joe comes in. It's like, let's talk a little bit about DDD. What have we learned over the past 6 years about our domain, so that we can actually design it with that learning in mind and make it future proof, right? So it has been a big challenge. Joe, thanks for helping us kind of like get that knowledge out. I think we're still paying a lot of that documentation debt. But as we hit some of these bottlenecks of scaling, right? There was no other choice but to involve a lot of people and really understanding what's up, what's running, and how can we make it simpler. So I'll give, like, last year, I guess it's been one of the most complex programs in my career. We had to remove a dependency that was at the core of the credit card systems, right? So imagine Nubank starts as a front end on top of a credit card backend that we bought off the shelf. Like a bunch of white label companies provide these types of things, right? And then as we grew, we're like, oh, we want to take care of our own billing now, or we want to take care of our own authorization. We have a deal with MasterCard, we'll do that. But one of the things that we needed to do, which is actually emit credit, we couldn't because we didn't have a banking license. 2 years back, we got our banking license finally. And when you are a real bank, there's this crazy thing that you can do, that you can take the money that people deposit on their savings accounts, and you can use that money to offer credit to other clients, right? We had a bunch of money in the savings account, but we weren't using it to fund our own credit business, because to emit credit, we were using third-party banks. We had to start with them because we weren't a bank up until a while ago. And then there's this huge opportunity to now leverage this license, but the systems were designed to be coupled to this thing, right? And there was no concept of credit in the system. So we started building a credit platform, right? It's like, okay, let's make sure that we have a canonical definition of what credit means. So credit, I'm going to give you, there's a loan, and this is the principal. These are the interest rates. We're going to use this calculation. These are the dates that matter. And here, our CEO has to sign a PDF and we have to register that with the central bank and regulating authorities, that's credit, right? If I'm giving you a personal loan, or if you're revolving on your credit card, in the end, under the turtles there, that credit abstraction holds, right? The interest rate is different, the installments are different, but that's the thing that we needed. And so we set out to build this platform. We launched our personal loan product on top of it, and credit card was running. And it took us over a year, 10 different teams. This is like 60 people involved into actually switching over from the legacy credit card system to use and leverage our own credit platform. So many crazy dependencies, a lot of discovery in terms of like, can anybody tell me what this business rule is? And credit card is crazy, right? Because you can buy a fridge on this bill, and then you can return your fridge and you get the cash back on the next bill, but you already paid some interest on that. And then it's like, it's just so many corner cases. And having to kind of like figure that out and try to, my general manager uses the metaphor of you're doing a heart transplant on somebody that's running a marathon, right? And then they have to keep up the pace. So that, Joe, you're absolutely right. It was incredibly challenging to first kind of bound that domain, right? And then understand how we could migrate a living system to leverage this new platform.
And I think something that helped just from an outsider, from seeing some of this, was your consistent architecture, that the fact that the things you were doing with datomic enclosure and your ports and adapters and other types, and it made it real easy to, as you're bringing new services and evolving it, number one. And secondly, is you started really putting an emphasis on getting feedback, real data of what's going on, even from lead time or what are the problems, how long does it really take to push something out, get that kind of information back. And that seemed invaluable to really help when you're making decisions and drive all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I've mostly been talking about the technical stuff, but the process challenges were there as well, right? So teams, we're really consistent in terms of tech, right? So you can write your microservice in any programming language you want, as long as it's Clojure. and that's it. And we get a lot of leverage from that consistency. It's easy for people to move teams. I mean, we were able to migrate from CloudFormation to Kubernetes. Everybody just upgraded a common lib, and in 2 weeks we were done, right? Mind blowing in terms of the impact of that change. But at the same time, in terms of process, we want teams to have the freedom, right? So you want to run a weekly sprint, a bi-weekly sprint, you're doing continuous flow. I don't care. You mean, are you happy? Are you delivering value? Are you following these modern agile principles? We're fine, right? I'm gonna use Trello, Post-its on the wall, Jira, it's like whatever. But as we grow, then it's like whenever you change team, oh no, they're using Asana, they're using Monday, they're using Trello. Now these folks are using Jira. You just gotta start paying that price too of not having a bit of consistency. And I guess the one thing that I try to help a little bit was like giving the visibility into some of the invisible work, right? Because it's very common for folks to only track engineering tickets. Like, what? Are engineers, software engineers, the only ones that are doing the work? Well, why can't I see the PMs or the BAs or the data scientists or the designers on this board? What's going on? Where's all that work? Where it's invisible, right? And then helping teams understand that, no, we have a value stream, more people contribute along that value stream than just the software engineers, and kind of even helping educate executives on the fact that it's not always software engineering that is your limiting constraint, right? Even though naively you could say that more software engineers, you'll get more product out, sure, and we need to hire, I mean, I'm hiring 180 software engineers this year, right? There's a lot of waiting time, there's a lot of waste in the way that, you know, our CEO comes up with an idea. We have a project that just came out late last year, which is a secure credit card where you can actually, you know, deposit some money, we give you twice that amount in limit, And then you can get a credit card, even though you don't have any credit history or something like that. The lead time on that project was 4 years, because the CEO remembers when he first had the idea. And then the clock starts ticking, right? It's like, why can't I get my secure card? What's wrong? What's wrong with you people, right? It's been 4 years. Like, nobody ever really started that project, Mr. CEO. It's just like you didn't really set us up to be able to go deep and execute on that. There are all these competing priorities. So giving some visibility on that, it's like, what's our portfolio flowing like, right? Do we really want to just keep having ideas and not have any throughput to deal with them? And furthermore, what's our failure rate like, right? So I told you about canceling that project in acquisition. I was new, so it's like, who cares? Alex is saying we should cancel this. I had a lot of, clout, I guess, from being new to be able to say, no, just completely kill this project. What I saw was a team with 5 engineers. One was a trainee, and he only did support for the operations. That's all he did every day. It's like hundreds of operations people. It's like, this guy been stuck in the queue, and then this other client is. The other 4, one was onboarding, and these 3 were running their own projects, right? So it's like 1 engineer per 2 projects kind of ratio. And one of the projects had a cost of delay of $1 million a month. So in dollars today, that's nothing, right? Our currency has really devalued, but every month that we didn't deliver that project is $1 million that we weren't making that month. Another project is just something that somebody decided to do. It's called, it's a way for us to like give a third-party information about people paying their bills on time, so they get better credit scores. Nobody could tell me what it was worth, or why we were doing it, or when we would get any value from it. It's just one of those things that kind of started and we're going. And the third project was something that we had to fix around our website deployment stuff. And when I looked at that, and then I looked at the 3 crashes per week, I was able to show the team and the executives that team's change failure rate was 70%, 80% sometimes. There's no way with that change failure rate that it can run 3 projects and wish to get anything done. So it's like, no, we're going to run 1 project, the one that is worth $1 million every month, and I want to get it out this month, right? And the rest of the time, we're going to have to deal with this failure rate. So giving that visibility and kind of like teaching folks that it's not only about the engineering work, but it's about understanding the value stream and finding those waiting times and finding that waste. What was the ammunition that we needed to actually like be able to make these calls, right?
So can I ask then, what actually, like I know the Brazilian banking market is very mature, so what sets Nubank aside against its competitors to make it a valued startup, but when there's all these large banks that you're competing against?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you, Ron. I think that for those that don't know the Brazilian banking market, we have an oligarchy of 5 big banks, right? The Brazilian bank, which is backed by the government, Itaú, Bradesco, Santander, and it turns out that now we're the 4th biggest bank, so we kind of got in that mix. But when we started, we were nothing, and I think that the biggest shift was customer service. These banks didn't really need to have happy customers, because you got to pick between one of the 5, and your heuristic is which one sucks less. We started with loving our customers and wanting them to be successful and charging 0 fees. So I guess it helps. It's like 0 fees. It's free credit card is free. You get this, you start using it right away. You pay us nothing. And then we focused on efficiency so that we could actually make that into a viable business model. Whereas our competitors were charging you, a monthly fee just to keep an account open, and the credit card fees to be able to have a credit card. So we attracted a lot of customers with zero fees, simpler products. So our savings account pays interest daily, and it's backed by government bonds. We abstracted away the complexity of getting those bonds. Anybody with 30 reais, $10, wait, that's not $10 anymore. Anyway, could buy government bonds, and they pay you some good interest, right? Not crazy today, but better than what the alternative were in terms of the most popular product, which is a savings account. And we created our account backed by that. You didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to opt in. You didn't have, I would say, I want to invest. Money comes in, you're making money. And as soon as you take your money out, we do all the calculation, we pay the bonds, buy the bonds, whatever we need to do, you're going to get that interest. So we made it instantaneous and almost magical for people to be able to save without charging them anything. And then this type of account became standard. All the other banks have a similar product. They didn't when we launched. So I think it was that relentless focus on how can we make things easier for our customers and how we can make them happy. I think that our customer support, like chat, email, phone, you talk to people that really want to help. We hire people that, you know, from many different backgrounds, that really want to help the customer, and we empower them to be able to solve problems, right? Really help instead of like, can you hold, can you wait? Oh, I'm sorry, the system is down. We really try to avoid that kind of standard. Our NPS is something like 86, 87 in banking, and it's unheard of, right? We've been winning the top of mind customer excellence award for the past 7 years in the Brazilian market. And it takes a lot of vision to kind of have that focus, right?
Hey, are you planning to come to Canada? We need that kind of business here.
So we don't have any concrete plans or detail to go to first world countries yet. We're looking at Latin America to start. So, you know, Mexico and Colombia for now. But who knows, right? If I'm successful with some of the platforms that we're building, they should be internationalizable, and it shouldn't be too hard for us to start tackling some of these other markets.
I mean, if you can handle Spanish, you can handle French too. So.
That's right.
How concerned does your business have to be with regards to things like information privacy? Like that's something that really is a big draw or adds a lot of weight to running businesses in Canada and other places. So how is it in Brazil?
So we have to be very concerned. So the information security and being in regulated industry adds a lot of constraints, right? So we have to show the central bank that we're serious about banking secrecy laws, that, you know, we're playing well with the international regulators in terms of like anti-money laundering and financial crimes and all that stuff. So we have a big InfoSec team that is, you know, both trying to attack us from the inside and looking at threats from the outside. We have a general data protection law that came into effect last year in Brazil, and it says that, you know, we have the right to be forgotten and all those things. We'll forget you, but on this one report for the central bank, we have to remember you for an extra 5 years. So there's some conflict there between what the customer gets from that law and what the central bank needs from its other laws, but we had to work around that. One of the things that we do is we try to avoid exposure to personal identifiable information. So with our microservices architecture, most teams don't know who you are. It's like, oh, here's a transaction, and it's a UI ID that represents a customer. Just the transaction and that ID, I can't identify you. So I have a lot of freedom, and most teams and people in these teams, they don't have to worry. And then we have some centralized places, it's like where if I can get your name and your address and a third piece of data, now I can identify you. We try to limit the exposure to the databases where that join happens. And we also separate our production environment from our analytical environment, so that most of our business analysts are working on day -1 data that's also anonymized, so that they can do all the business projections without having to worry about, oh, I'm actually looking at a social security number and a name and a balance. That's banking secrecy, that's private information. So there's a lot of things that extra things that we need to do to make sure that we cater to that non-functional requirement. It's fascinating. I'm like a lot of the auditors that we get, they're not used to seeing, distributed microservices architectures, and not used to audit technology like, the Datomic database that we have. The Datomic is great because it's based on events. So what I told you about our analytical environment, we actually we run it every night, and we reconstruct Nubank from day 0, right? We just take all the events that we have in Datomic and we play it back, and now we have this huge data lake that can change. We can migrate, we can add new entities, we just have that transformation layer that runs every night. Amazon really likes us, they're wearing the Amazon Web Services. And then we just replay all the transformation from day 0, and we create that analytical environment for folks to work on. That separation really helps on protecting and caring about banking secrecy regulations and things.
There is a question from Ravi. Ravi, do you still want to ask that question? I'll let you.
I haven't been looking at the chat. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's a long one. Ravi, why don't you just take that?
Yeah, sorry, it's a long one. Alex, hi. I know you touched upon the challenges pertaining to testing, system integration. What I was wondering is, when you're building something, especially to the startup, and the product is going out, how careful are you? Meaning, what I wanted to ask was, do you have stages of testing, like when it is happening during the development stage, then it goes into the integration stage, and then pre-prod, or you just automate some stuff? How do you approach it?
So we have a very strict culture around automated testing, right? So the software engineers they automate their tests for everything, and we have micro tests around our functions. Another advantage of this closure hexagon architecture is most of our business logic is pure closure functions, so easy to test, right? And then on the borders, we have our ports and adapters to deal with, like, queuing and asynchronous messaging or synchronous HTTP calls or database calls and things like that. So the architecture itself makes it easier for us to write automated tests. Then we have some acceptance tests that we wrote our own framework that allows us to test multi-service flows in the same JVM really fast in memory. Kind of like invested in that when we killed the staging environment, the end-to-end test, because we also wanted to make sure that the chain worked, not only the links in the chain.
Yes.
We have contract tests between the services, so if anybody changes something, we'll be warned at integration time. And we also have some manual testing that can happen in a staging environment. So, but we don't really have a gated flow there in terms of quality. Developer environment, you just write those tests, you run those tests. If it goes to CI, it will be deployed in staging after passing a bunch of test suites. You can do your due diligence in some manual tests, and then you can deploy to production, right? We deploy to production multiple times a day, every day. And I think one of the advantages that we have is that all of our employees are clients. So, I have my credit card and my bank account at Nubank.
That makes it easy.
We eat our own dog food. So new features, our MVPs, we launch them to ourselves, and then we test in production. And we still find, last minute issues and scaling issues like that. And then we slowly roll out to customers. So I think that's one of the biggest changes from traditional environments is that we don't have heavy, homologation environments, or we have months of manual testing, or record and playback kind of testing happening. We also have automated rollbacks with canneries, as Joe mentioned here in the chat. And I think one of the things that I find really curious, because through my many years at Industrial Logic Consulting, I don't think I can count in one hand the number of times where I found a big company that was doing software and product that did not have quality assurance as a separate department or as a specialty. We have zero QA. There's no QA role. There's no director of QA. There's everybody's responsible for quality, right? Engineers write automated tests. Who tests the product? Everybody. The product manager, the support folks, the business analysts, the squad lead, the general manager, everybody helps test and guarantee that we have that quality. And we've been living without a separate quality assurance organization for 7 years, and I don't miss it. I don't think we'll ever need it. And it's something that to me is really curious, right? Because I've seen the clash between engineering, operations, and quality, and here we don't have to deal with that at all.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, that was solid information, because you know how it is in conventional enterprises. They have the gating process before it's actually sort of sent live, right? So I was just wondering how it was, and yeah, thanks for the info.
You're welcome. Thank you for a great question, Javi.
Thank you.
Cesar has another question.
Hello, Alex. How are you? I'm Cesar from Brazil, but I am living in Mexico right now. And you talked about Mexico and Colombia. I want to know what are the main challenges that you think about going across other countries, and about having autonomous team, and at the same time having to share some services between Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia.
So that's a great question, Cesar, because we want new country teams to feel like a scrappy startup, right? Dozens of people focused on that time to market kind of mission. But at the same time, we don't want them to have to reinvent the wheel or write everything from scratch. So there are a few components that we can provide that give a lot of leverage to those teams. So all of our infrastructure, for example, right? The way we do our deployments and the automation of actually rolling out AWS infrastructure is something that we were able to internationalize easily. Not easily. People are gonna feel, if they're hearing, they're gonna say it wasn't easy, but we were able to do it. And that gave those teams a lot of leverage. And then there are some technologies and platforms that were further along. So for example, our authorization platform, the one that actually talks to MasterCard to approve a transaction, is something that we developed in-house, and we're able to port to Mexico and Colombia really quickly. So those teams don't have to worry about the high throughput, low latency, big risk, fraud risk kind of concerns. We abstract that away from them. Of course, there's some configurations, right? So like in Brazil, we have a multi-debit and credit card is just one chip, and we use PINs. In Mexico, you can sign, right? And in Colombia, you're gonna have two cards, one for debit, another for credit. So there's some customization that you need to do, and local business logic as well. Tax is different, right? In Brazil, we have this tax called IOF, and in Mexico, we have a VACH. So it's kind of like that healthy tension between, I really want to launch, but I need help. Your thing is not internationalized yet. If I leverage that and I help you internationalize that thing, maybe I can launch sooner. How can we work together to make this happen? And a lot of learning, because those teams are coming in and onboarding into Nubank, having to kind of like take that legacy and apply it, right? I'll give you another example. I talked a little bit about the credit platform that we created. Once we had that, it was really easy for us to leverage it for Mexico. It actually took a while. So Mexico launched before we finished the credit card switching to the credit platform in Brazil. But after we were able to do that, we were able to deploy that same credit platform in Mexico. And the tax calculation that I said, it's different in both countries, took us just 2 weeks of a centralized team to add the different tax calculation for Mexico, right? And that team didn't have to worry about tax, right? They got that in that package. And then we had, very driven by the pandemic, the ability to do an installment plan on your bill, right? Let's say you owe $1,000 and you want to pay that in 10 installments of 100. We built that in Brazil on top of that platform. Once that feature was available here, it was instantly available in Mexico, and we're able to launch that same product over there. Nubank does this very differently. Normals, I guess, I don't know what you call them, the incumbent banks, they go international by buying existing banks in different countries, right? So they're running this patchwork of systems, and I don't know how they communicate. We have no mainframes. We're not running any COBOL code. We're able to just get an AWS instance up there and just move the same stuff. Our architectures share nothing between countries, so it's about deploying these same services, and sometimes there are a bunch of different strategies, right? So like the credit platform, it's like, okay, tell me what the tax strategy is, and I can run agnostic. I don't even know which country I'm running on. I just work, right? Whereas some of the interest calculation stuff, it's so different that there's a specific service to do things in Mexico and a different service that does things in Brazil. They just share the same API so that there's some reuse and leverage and scaling there. I don't know if that helps with your question, Cesar.
Yeah, sure. And I have one personal question, actually, because I have my Nubank in Brazil and I will also have my Nubank here in Mexico. And I want to know if I will be able to transfer money from Brazil to Mexico.
Not yet.
No?
Not yet. You can use the same app. You can just change your login. You can use the same app for both the Brazil product and the Mexico product. But inter-country transfers is not something that we're tackling just yet.
There's no plan to do that for now.
Again, our CEO asked for that 10 years ago, right? The time clock is ticking. There's like one of the really hard things about being a startup in banking is that a lot of these things are table stakes, and we're catching up. We don't even have, we have the plate on the table. We're missing the silverware. There's so much that we don't do. We have like 5 products. A normal bank has hundreds of products, right? We have one personal loan product. I can't give you a car loan. I can't give you a home loan. So we're kind of running behind. The one thing I'll tell you though that we'll not do when we did gap analysis with the other banks, we won't do paper checks. So that's not on our backlog.
I don't need that. That's fine.
But the other things we're kind of just running behind, right? And also trying to find new products that might innovate and help, right? Instead of just trying to copy the menu of hundreds of products that traditional banks offer.
So Alex, how do you keep the same culture and quality and way of working and thinking when you open new offices in these other countries? You are not there to see what's going on. You are not there to help them in the day-to-day. How do you keep the culture?
So I think keeping the culture is a big challenge, not only for these new offices, but for the Brazilian office as it grows, right? We're almost 3,000 people in Brazil at this point, and 3 years back, we were hundreds, right? So I think it's a lot of it is the onboarding and just like repeating yourselves. Like we have these values, we leave these values. There's a bi-weekly coffee break that the all hands for the company. We always have a section on value promoters where we tell the story of somebody that was living one of our values, and we share that, and we share it on onboarding, and we just repeat, kind of like educate. But a lot of seeding new offices is also having people that come from the matrix, right? So when we started Mexico, a bunch of our folks, product managers, business people, engineers, designers, they moved to the Mexico office and kind of seeded the culture there. We started an office in Argentina, same thing. Unfortunately, the Argentinian economy is not doing so great, so we kind of canceled our plans of launching the product there. But we have a great center, a lot of talent. We were keeping that office. We have an office in Berlin, in Germany. Again, it started with a bunch of folks that went from Brazil to kind of seed that thing. Same thing for Colombia. You know, we give this opportunity for folks to move abroad and kind of start these things. And maybe one day in Canada, Cheesy, we'll see.
As a newer bank, and like right now, you hear a lot about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So as a newer bank, you know, how does that fit into your strategy, or is you know, or is the focus just on the value driven, the nice warm fuzzy feeling you get as a customer, or are you being forward thinking, or?
I knew this question would come up, Ron. Is fintech equals blockchain?
You need to ask me to ask you. No, I'm kidding.
It hit $50,000, right? Everybody wants to be in on this thing. We're about simplifying people's relationship with money. So if you want to invest in Bitcoin, I would say you're an aggressive investor, right? And you know about risk, and maybe Nubank is not going to be the place where you can't buy GameStop stock here either. And it's just we don't have any investments products up until now, except that savings account that's transparent, automatic, right? We just give you the yield. Last year, we did acquire a company in Brazil called Easy Invest, and we do want to offer investments to our clients. But I think there are two very different segments, right? The ones that have never invested and are really afraid and really they're surviving, right? They shouldn't risk their money on Bitcoin or GameStop. And so we'll help them do what's right for them and make sure that they're risk-free, right? And then we have folks that, you know, hey, I want to learn more about how to handle my finances, and I want to have some moderate risk, and I might want to have part of my portfolio in very aggressive risk. And then they might go after, you know, stocks and things like Bitcoin as one of the opportunities. I'm personally not very excited of like working in Bitcoin. I don't know, some of these customers want it. I think it kind of failed on its mission, right? Nobody's using Bitcoin to do transactions. One Bitcoin transaction like spends so many kilowatts, is like orders of magnitude more than what a credit transaction spends. Today I see it more as a speculation mechanism than really an investment mechanism. And I don't know. I mean, I cashed out all my Bitcoin once I saw like some studies about the environmental. Do you know what Bitcoin's primary use case is, folks? Anybody wants to guess what's like the primary use case for Bitcoin today, 2021? No.
Global identity?
No. Bitcoin, it's just like people are leveraging it as speculation, right? And of course, everybody wants you to get into Bitcoin now because they hit 50K because they just got in, and they need you to be at the bottom of the pyramid, right? So that they can cash out. The primary Bitcoin use case today is extortion. So, you know, hackers will come in and own your hospital systems. You pay them in Bitcoin, right? that's what it's used for. We don't really want to be associated with criminals that are extorting money, and that's what's happening in that technology today, unfortunately, right? I mean, it had a lot of promise, but because it's untraceable and all that, there's so many liabilities if we were to tackle that market. But of course, you know, people look at it as like, should we keep some of our assets in gold and Bitcoin and whatever? I'm not the finance expert to be able to say if that's a good choice for the bank as a whole or not. From the technological point of view, I don't really see why we would do our own like blockchain mining kind of like deal. There's so many other products that we could work on that would help our people invest, our customers invest. And if they do really want to invest in Bitcoin, you know, there's Coinbase, there's Binance, there's all these other big established companies that allow you to do that today. Not sure if that's a satisfactory answer, Ron.
Hi, Alex. I'm Bruno, also Brazilian, living in Mexico. Can you tell us a little bit more about the acquiring strategy? For me, it was a huge surprise, Nubank acquiring Cognitech. What we can expect about the evolution of the language outside Nubank?
So to me, acquiring Cognitech was like the culmination of a plan. It was like my second week in, I'm talking to our CTO. I was like, wow, Clojure is great. Datomic is awesome. You know, maybe one day we could work closer to the Cognitech guys. And then we kind of engaged. They came, they did some training. And at one point, both of us, like Nubank and Cognitech, realized that we're your biggest client, right? We're bigger than Sun Microsystems when Sun decided to be Java's patron, right? So why can't we just work together and make sure that Clojure is going to stick around and be valuable for others, right? I mean, Cognitech has other banks as clients that use Datomic. We don't want to take that business away, but we really want to be able to be close to the evolution of both the programming language and the database. And we really needed a bunch of senior developers, right? So in our engineering career ladder, software engineers, we have a Y ladder. So you can take the management track where I am, and at the top you could be CTO, right? Or you can take the team member track, and at the top is this distinguished engineer role, right? And a distinguished engineer has impacted the industry, like Rich Hickey did when he wrote Clojure, right? And now I can look at my junior engineers and say, here, you can see the path of your career arc. Maybe 30 years from now, you be a distinguished engineer, just like our colleague Rich Hickey that's sitting next to you here on Zoom, right? So to me, that was one of the biggest things of this acquisition, is actually be able to show that it's not just talk. This career path exists, and distinguished engineers, they exist, and they can have huge impact in the industry. It's been really awesome to work close with folks from Cognitech. It was just an influx of experience, diversity, and I mean, it's been helping us with a lot of things, including leveling up folks in English speaking skills, because they're all in the US, and they're forcing most of our teams to default to our official language, which is English. We're not going to interfere with Clojure or anything like that, right? Rich and Clojure, they're their own thing, and it will continue with its plan, and we just want to support it. But we're really happy to have people really close by. We have some of our own engineers that moved to some of those teams. So one of Pedro Machelli, one of the staff engineers that's worked with me back in our database team, is now part of the Datomic team. So it's really interesting, the possibilities that it kind of opened up at that kind of, we call it foundation, right? Engineering foundation, the tooling like Datomic itself, or Clojure, the programming language. that allows all of our software engineers to get a lot of leverage.
Cool, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Bruno.
Nobody's asking. I have another one. As you mentioned about the career path, the career ladder in Nubank. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? How do you deal? Do you have this why you told us? How is
Yes,
that?
we want people to say we see going to management as a shift in your career focus instead of a promotion, right? So if you want to manage, it's a different job than if you're just like contributing with code. So we don't want to like people feel that they get stuck. Or now I'm a senior engineer. The only thing I can do is become a terrible manager to grow, right? So we have the parallel track. We've been working a lot and kind of iterating in how we give clarity of the skills and behaviors that we're looking for at each level. And it's just been, I guess it's challenging, right? Because personally, I'm not a big fan of performance cycles and putting people into boxes. And we have like this the engineering chapter, right? So you're a software engineer. I just helped one of my software engineers become a technical product manager because he was great as a software engineer, but I really needed somebody that knew software engineering to be a product manager of our internal support system, which is an engineering product that other engineers use. And I'm like, hey, dude, there's this other career path. We'll teach you product management and we're going to make this up as we go along, but it's what we really need right now for this team, right? So there's some lateral transfer that happens between these chapters, but I don't know. I think we still have a lot to go in terms of the organization to make sure that people really feel supported and that we're respectful to their humanity and the breadth of things that they can tackle. Right? So one story that might be interesting sharing is that within the career ladder, right? Most of the behaviors and skills defined reflect the life of a back-end engineer because a bank is 80% back-end, right? It's all these services talking to each other. That's most of the complexity is there. And then we have some of the website stuff and that 18% of the mobile app that's front end and the front end specialists never really saw themselves in that ladder, right? So we had to generalize it. Say, oh, when it's saying common library here, maybe we mean module, right? Or even the infosec specialist, like, oh, but I'm a specialist in this other thing. We welcome specialists. We want specialists. If you're deeply passionate about iOS and tattoo the Apple logo, sleep next to Steve Jobs' biography every day, and you just want to work on iOS, by all means, we need you, right? But most of our software engineers, they're going to be a little bit more paint drip shaped, right? They might go deeper in the back end here, but they want to do some mobile too. So we maybe about a little bit over a year back, we decided to standardize on Flutter as our mobile app technology, right? And a lot of the Android and iOS engineers were triggered by this concept, right? It's like, but I don't want to do, hybrid app development in Flutter. I want to do some of the Android. So there's room. There's still the abstraction, right? There's a core Flutter team that has these native specialties. But what we really want is in a team, an engineer to be able to both do the backend in Clojure and the front end in Flutter. So they only have to learn one technology. And once they ship a feature, it ships in all the platforms, right? And we're trying to, again, fight complexity with some of those choices. They're very opinionated and they're kind of strict, but we've gotten a lot of leverage from making those choices. It doesn't make the career conversation any easier, though. It actually makes it a little bit harder.
Nice. Thank you.
Any other questions? So
Alex, I'm curious about, by the way, I like Clojure. I haven't had experience with it, but I'm curious, were you involved in the selection of that, or did that exist when you got there, and what was the rationale for that?
So when I came to Nubank, Clojure and the hexagonal architecture for microservices was already a standard, right?
Okay.
Nubank did not start with Clojure. Guess what they used in their first MVP?
Something like Java, something like that.
Ruby on Rails.
Oh, yeah.
Fun. But then they just fell in love with functional programming, and they found the joy of Clojure and the expressiveness and it turns out that immutability is really good to make things simpler to test and to work with financial services. So it kind of fit the domain really well. And then they just decided on that standardization, right? When I joined Cheesy, I'll confess, right? I had my list, hard questions to ask the CTO after 30 days. And one of the questions was, microservices are all about liberty, right? One team can do Go, another team can do Python, another team can do Java, .NET, right? Why would you put yourself in this box and paint yourself in this corner with a hipster technology that nobody knows? How can I grow my team if I can't hire Java developers or .NET developers? Are you crazy? And it turns out that at the end of those 30 days, I did not ask him that question. Because it became obvious to me the gains that we were getting on just having a simple standard. Just in terms of lateral movement, people can go from one team to the other. I can understand this code. I read it. It's the same patterns. It's the same libraries. So in the pandemic, right, the Brazilian government came in with an edict that said, don't charge taxes on credit card anymore, right? And this is valid today. So they signed the law is on the official journals, and from that day on, you shouldn't be charging the tax on credit card anymore. Our competitors still charge that tax and then have hundreds of financial analysts in a back office manually inputting the cash back, right? We changed one common library, Common Finance, and we said from this date until that date, the tax is 0. We bumped a bunch of services, and on that same day, we deployed that requirement. You can't get that type of leverage if everybody's using a different language, right? It's just impossible. So to me, that's like the golden story about why it's so great to just have one thing and be able to have this type of leverage.
I'm yelling expletives while on mute, just saying.
What percentage of Nubank's business is like in the branch versus online?
We don't have any branches, so we're really a digital bank. We have one office. Some people show up in the office and they're like, I want to withdraw some cash. It's like, no, just go to an ATM. Any ATM will work. You have 5 withdrawals a month, no fees. It just works. And in Brazil, there's also this other thing called lotérica. It's basically where people go to buy lottery tickets, but they can do a lot of other financial life stuff. So like pay a cash slip. We have this other crazy instrument. I'll show you one. This is my property tax. You see the barcode? This is part of being a Brazilian. You get your bills with a barcode, and then you can go to this lotérica, you can go to a branch, or you can open Nubank's phone and scan the barcode and pay that bill, right? So we don't have any cash. We don't have any branches. We're completely digital.
That makes a lot of sense, like how quickly you can move, because all those other banks have all these branches with all these people and procedures and stuff. Like, yeah, I've actually worked on a startup in Brazil, and it was very difficult to get it going. And it wasn't the technology that was the thing that slowed us down.
Well, I don't know. We have digital banks here in Canada. Like an hour before our call, I was on a phone with them because they messed up something, and they are fully digital. It's not the branches that create a problem, it's the way you look at the business.
It is, but if you think about all the paperwork and all the procedures, like I've gone into a lot of credit unions and been with a lot of banks, and just all the mounds of processes you need to go through to get that one change that's going to affect the back end banking system at one of the large banks, right? Or go through to a credit union that's been come out of 20 different credit unions, and each branch has a different procedure. And now you're trying to roll out a new product.
Yeah.
Not so easy.
Yeah.
It doesn't go very well, but if you can roll it out, right, and it's self-serve, then you don't have the baggage, right? Just imagine how you can rethink about how banking can be done when you don't have to deal with all that legacy, right?
So this piece of conversation has a nice connection to a question in the chat about 5 slots back from Ilya.
Who had that?
Ilya, do you want to read out the question or should I?
Oh, yeah, Ilya. About the company culture.
So I don't know if I'll just...
What you were referring, is that what you were referring to, Ashley?
Ilya is still online. Ilya, do you want to talk about it? Or?
I don't know, can you hear me at all? Because I have hardware issues.
Okay, I'll read it. Yeah, so it's about big organizations that people do what their manager says, right? And it's almost impossible for a developer to have his ideas approved. No budget, no time, different priorities. Were there any feedback loops implemented in Nubank?
Yeah, so this is a great question. Part of our culture is that we want our employees to act like owners, right? And then to live that, we make them owners. We all get equity, right? So you're actually an owner, right? It's not just written on the wall. And we want our software engineers to be an active part in the product community. So we want them to be able to have ideas and contribute and change things, propose new products and things like that. But that said, a lot of people come in and it's like, oh my God, 3,000 people in the organization, I should do what my manager says, right? So I try to train our managers to understand that they have the voice of thunder. It's like, if you're gonna speak, just make sure that you are aware of that, that power relationship and that your voice counts more, and then maybe frame your suggestion as please ignore my suggestion, or to help me to understand why it's silly, right? Or it's like, make sure that you open it up so that people can disagree with you as a manager. Otherwise, they're just going to do what you say, and you have less context than them, and your idea is probably not the best idea. One of the things we try to do, again, to elevate the psychological safety in the teams is framing our challenges as experiments, right? It's like, hey, can we figure out if this is viable or not? We're also very data driven, so we'll A/B test, and we'll do rollouts that are limited, and then we'll actually look at the data and say, was this good? Was this not good? I wish that more software engineers actually contributed actively with the product community. I think they have lots of ideas. We've had new teams come up out of these ideas. We had a passionate couple of business analysts and product engineer, and they launched our life insurance product. They came up with the idea. The business analysts kind of like made the case to the CEO, and they're now a new BU, right? But they kind of started that because they were passionate about it, right? So we try to have a lot of feedback loops, and again, this is a question of repeating ourselves endlessly, right? You can contribute your ideas. What are your ideas? Please, the product manager he doesn't carry the weight of the world, and he owns the product. He's the only person that can make product decisions. No, we're a team. Please contribute with your ideas. And I guess one of the things that I like that really helps is our CEO is really accessible. So he has office hours. He used to sit by the coffee that we had in the lobby in our building and just like, line up, I'm here, anybody can talk to me, right? And one of our, we call them ex-peers, they're about the customer experience. One of our ex-peers working in one of these processes, I mean, it's not branch-based, but we have processes on how we deal with customers. She just sat with the CEO and said, you know, we're really suffering with this tool. And look, I drew some designs here and I have some ideas of how we can, it's like, it's like lean in its essence. I'm doing the work, I know where the pain is. And if we did this, let me draw it for you, my life and my colleagues' life would be so much easier. And the CEO is like, principal engineer, designer, you're gonna work with her and you're gonna get this out. And it turns out that they built not exactly what she drew, because then we had the designers and we iterated but we completely changed the system that her team was using based on her contribution and achieved incredible amounts of efficiency on a process that just wasn't working very well. So I love that story because it shows that, you know, it doesn't matter who you are, you can go up directly to the CEO and pitch your idea. And if it's a good one, you have a very clear shot at winning.
I really like when you said, eat your own dog food. That reminded me of when I was younger, like some of you guys here back in the 80s. And when that, actually it was Sun Microsystems and I think Microsoft back then that's what they sort of touted as they were coming live. But back then, that's what we did to grow our startup. We used our own technology. Right? If something went wrong, then it hurt our business and we were quick to fix it, right? I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Ron, if you were young like us in the 80s, then you've aged well and you're really ancient.
I am ancient.
That's one of the challenges with having these offices in different countries. Like, so the folks in Argentina, they could get a social security number in Brazil and get a card, but it's not that you don't really want to be paying your credit card bill in another country, right? So it's harder for them to engage. And I was talking to one of my teams is responsible for some of the customer excellence platforms and their auto reply. And this guy, Matthias, he's great. He's a data scientist. And I just challenged him to use the chat and see what the auto reply experience was feeling like. Because last year we had a big focus on efficiency because of the pandemic, right? We had to big aggressive cost measures, and we tweaked the auto reply a little bit too much. And I was like, dude, the Brazilians in your team, just have them share their phone screen and go and have a chat with your auto reply model, right? And he came back and had two pieces of it, like insights. Like the first one, the app is beautiful. Just from the mock-ups, I couldn't see the transitions. I'm in love. The second one is like, the auto reply wait time is forever. Before it was 90 seconds. Before he actually lived through it, he knew it was 90 seconds. We coded it as 90 seconds. But once he's using it, he's like, it takes forever for that thing to answer. I was like, yeah, thank you for using the app. What should we do about it, right? Because I felt like it was forever. And when you guys were saying, no, but it's 90 seconds, 90 seconds, not that much. I wasn't getting through to him, right? And once he went through the visceral experience of waiting forever for that reply, things got much easier in that conversation.
We have about 7 minutes left. So one last question. If it's burning, bring it up. Fad wants more stories. On what topic, Fad?
Just tell us another one, Alex. That's all. They're all amazing and great.
Alex, if you could go back and talk to yourself over the months before you made the final decision to join this company, what would you tell yourself about making that transition and what was going to be important?
Wow, so that's a great one, Ashley, because like hindsight, right? I mean, all the things that I know today so I guess I would double down on it. It's about the people, right? Even though you're excited about the technology and you're excited about, having a huge software engineering team to leverage, I still struggle a little bit with the divides between the chapters, right? So I'll share a story. We have this team, right? And they're responsible for the back office platform where customer service will deal with a chat or a phone. And basically we give them a website that's of course internal where they can service a client, right? Oh, let me check that transfer. Okay, oh, well, yeah, I see here that you paid the same bill twice, let me refund the second time, right? And they have that autonomy. The customers of that tool are the product engineering teams, right? They'll put whatever the customer needs on the app to self-service, but then they have to create the view in the back office, right? So that the agent can service a customer. And this one team, a handful of engineers, has like from 40 to 60% of their weekly work is unplanned. Because imagine you have a handful of engineers here and you have a bunch of handfuls of engineers in the product teams, you're outnumbered, right? They all want to ask questions about adding their widget to the back office, and it's 100 to 1, right? And then we're like dealing with this, like, oh my God, do all questions need to be answered by a software engineer? How can we deal with, we're excellent at customer support. How can we use some of the learnings from supporting our external customers to support these internal customers? And then I try to bring a few XPers in. It's like, hey, could we run an experience where you're the first line of contact, right? You're more technical. Maybe you dream about going to software engineering career one day. We'll teach you about the APIs and the documentation and some of the pull requests, or like looking at logs in Splunk, so that you can service these engineers and be the first line of defense before you escalate to the second line, which is going to be this team, right? And yeah, they were willing to run it as an experiment. We can try, let's see, most of this was invisible work, right? So direct messages on Slack or pull requests on GitHub. It's like, no, we're going to have a ticking system so that we can actually look at the queues, and we need an FAQ. We need all these things that we know how to do applied to this internal dilemma. But when we were having this one meeting, okay, let's kick off the experiment in January. Are you good? Are you good? Are you good? One of these XPers came to me and said, hey, Alex, I want to say something that's like, we're willing to do this experiment, but we're really worried that we're going to get some engineers that are just going to say, who the fuck are you? I want to talk to an engineer. Why are you answering my question, right? And I'm just gutted at the fact that we're all people. They're doing a great job that you can't do as an engineer, because you can't talk to the customer in the tone of voice and like deal with the pressure that they are able to deal with. It's like, it's a very different, very hard job that's also creative and all that you like. And we're in the same company. And if they feel that, they're a second-class citizen and that they're going to be mistreated because like, no, I'm an engineer, I want another engineer to answer questions, we failed that fundamental human connection. So I guess I would have come in a little bit more prepared on the org challenges, right? Bringing these different chapters together. One of the things that I hate that we cargo culted was the Spotify model. Oh my God. First, it's nothing, right? As soon as they wrote, I saw that Neil Killick was here earlier. As soon as they wrote the paper, they stopped using the model at Spotify, right? Shit. Second, it's from the 70s. Banks love this shit because it's a matrix, right? Separation of concerns, and everybody has 5 bosses, and then the regulators are happy. And it creates all these divides. No, I'm in the engineering chapter, you're in the XPer chapter. We have something like 50 chapters. There's an executive assistant chapter. There's a technical writer subject. We have the Agilist chapter now. It's a subchapter of engineering, right? And I'm like, oh my God, and there's like, only an engineer can be a boss of another engineer. It's like, I would love to have a team where it's like, I can manage a product manager. Why does this product manager, my team, have a boss in another BU sitting in another geography that knows nothing about his day-to-day, and comes performance cycle, they have to ask me, how did he do? Is he doing okay? Okay, I'll give him a promotion. Thank you, Alex. It's like, oh my God. It's like, so I came in and I wasn't prepared for all the drawbacks of some of that status quo there, Ashley. And I think it comes through that I'm not completely satisfied with how we're organizing ourselves. I would have certainly, if I could, go back, come in harder with some pushbacks around some of those ideas, because it would have been easier to fix 3 years ago, right? And the other thing is just the diversity. So I came to Nubank because when I heard that we had 40% LGBTQA plus in our company, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. But it turns out that that's when you look at all the population, right? In engineering, we're still very, white, cis, male. And we're not representative of the Brazilian population, the Mexican population, the Colombian population. This year, we're starting with a lot more affirmative action. So we just have an event that's going to be focused on hiring for people that identify as Black or brown. But like that's also another thing that I wish we had taken a stronger stance at fixing 3 years ago.
Wow. I don't know. To Fad's point, so many stories. I love the stories and I love to hear more, but we are at time. We've been with you for an hour and a half and it feels like half an hour and it just flew by from all the good stories. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing with us all these good stories, and good and bad, right? Even the joy and the frustration, because there's always frustration. Otherwise, there's nothing left to do and there's no improvements, which is never true. So I am grateful and I appreciate so much everything you shared with us tonight. And thank you everyone for joining us and staying around and asking the beautiful questions to make Alex tell us more stories. So yeah, have a great evening, have a great day, depending where you're joining from. And thanks, Alex, again.
Thank you, everyone. It's my honor, my pleasure to be here. It's so nice to see some of my old friends and share some of these stories. It was really, really nice. Thank you again, Ardita, for the opportunity. I love that.
Fantastic. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.